Hi, it's Dana Sidebottom here for Publivate, and I'm here to talk a little bit about a project we did for Employment and Social Development Canada. Now, Employment and Social Development Canada, or ESDC, partnered with Publivate to engage with high-risk youth on opportunities and barriers that they encounter when applying to and completing post-secondary education. Right off the bat, the audience is what made this challenge both really unique and really complex. We had questions like, how do we reach out to youth? Where might we find them? What's the best way to talk to them? How do we approach them about a topic that might be sensitive or even in some cases triggering? In addition, the fact that the project was about high-risk youth made this complication even greater because we had to figure out what high risk means and then make sure that we were engaging with these youth in a respectful manner, which meant not necessarily using language like high risk to define these youth when we were talking with them. Ultimately, we decided that we would speak with youth over the age of 18, which meant that we couldn't really partner with high schools in order to reach out to youth, and instead had to talk to universities and colleges, youth groups. We had to reach out to social workers and teachers that had students who had graduated from high school that might be interested in speaking with us. So the challenge of gathering the audience was the first thing that we really had to overcome. Once we had gathered an audience, we determined that speaking to youth in person was the best way to get these stories and to collect this data, which meant that we traveled to 4 different cities and talked to youth from a variety of different backgrounds, including youth who were first-generation immigrants and or ESL youth, youth who had been through the foster care system or youth care system, youth who were Indigenous, youth who came from low-income families, and youth that came from high-risk neighborhoods and schools where the opportunities are just are less available. We also then determined that this had to be more of a conversation and less of an engagement plan, which meant that we didn't really create an interview document or a script. Instead, what we did was we created a list of prompts and questions that we could use if the conversation needed some help. But mostly we just met youth where they were at, which meant meeting them for coffee or breakfast, or sitting with them between classes, explaining the project to them, explaining why it was important, and then asking them to tell their story. We recorded them as they were speaking and took brief notes during the conversations, but mostly we just listened. And then came the second big challenge of this project, which was in the data analysis and reporting. We wanted these stories to be authentic and real. We wanted to make sure that we weren't erasing youth opinions, youth viewpoints, or youth voices, but we also had to protect the anonymity of the participants that had joined us. So we wrote case studies where each youth was given an alias and specific data around their life story, around the way that they had lived was removed so that they weren't easily identifiable by parents, teachers, and peers. But the heart of what they said, their challenges, their opportunities, the things that they tried in overcoming these obstacles, those all remained. The second half of the challenge was that while ESDC is a federal level department, the barriers and opportunities these youth were speaking to were very regional specific because they were going to universities in different provinces or colleges. They had been through different youth care systems or different social care situations. And so we had to find a way to make the data relevant to a federal level project while keeping some of that regional specificity in because it was important to the story. Ultimately, we determined that the best way to do this was to create a list of recommendations that the youth had specifically spoke to, develop a list of action items that the federal government could act on, and then highlight key programs in each region that were doing great work that could be used as roadmaps or models that the federal government could either help fund or use to parrot and make more programs in those veins. The project ended up speaking to more than 20 youth in 4 different provinces. The final report was a cohesive and collaborative effort between us and the youth we spoke to, and of course was sent to the youth in advance of it being shared with the client or with the public to ensure that they were comfortable with what we wrote, and ultimately was 80 pages of recommendations, action items, and personal stories. It's work that we are still very proud of to this day, and something that we hope to revisit in the future as these programs begin to be rolled out and trialed across the country. Thank you.